Shy girl tells CEO to shut up. Discover the incredible reason that transformed his life forever. Emma's heart raced as she sat among her peers in the sleek conference room of Titan Tech, glancing nervously at the extravagant, glass-paneled walls. She could feel the electric energy crackle in the air, thick with ambition and unspoken judgments. Mark Thompson, the tenacious CEO whose charisma filled every inch of the space, was droning on about the latest tech innovation that would surely skyrocket profits. Emma's palms were clammy as she fought to muster the courage to speak. It was her chance, her shot at making a real impact. But doubt gnawed at her resolve, suffocating her words just as they formed. She thought of her father, his hands calloused from factory work, who dedicated his life to ensuring she chased her dreams. She never wanted to let him down, yet here she was, shrinking back. As Mark's dismissive attitude toward her contributions reached a boiling point, Emma felt the tempest within her erupt. Forget the polite responses she rehearsed. As his condescending laugh echoed in the room, she stood up, her voice trembling yet furious. "Shut up." The command sliced through the air, leaving an unbearable silence. Eyes widened in disbelief, her heart lodged in her throat. Mark turned to her, surprise etched across his features. Had she really just said that? Internally, she faced an avalanche of emotions: anger, terror, exhilaration. How could she have let words escape her lips? Yet, beneath that chaos surged a fierce determination. With every breath, she stepped forward, fueled by a torrent of memories of her father who never had a voice, who sacrificed his all for a factory that never cared. She talked about the negligence that cost her father his life, that fleeting moment when ambition outpaced concern for human safety. Her words, raw and fueled by grief and anger, reached Mark. She could see him shifting, absorbing her message with an unexpected intensity. In that moment, something shifted within him too. He didn't just see Emma the intern, he saw a young woman driven by loss, embodying the struggle faced by countless like her father, a toll taken by the relentless thirst for profit. As they locked eyes, the tension sparked a deeper connection. The path ahead opened, fraught but compelling, urging her to take bold steps into the treacherous unknown of corporate reality. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Back in the tension of the room, Emma felt a surge of exhilaration mixed with fear. Was she really challenging the status quo? Would her words ignite a ripple affecting lives beyond her own? But self-doubt crept in like a thief, whispering reminders of her trepidation. What if she was wrong? What if this connection faltered? A storm brewed within, a mix of hope for change and the despair that came with vulnerability. Moments turned the tide as discussions spiraled into the ethics in workplace safety, the divide between ambition and compassion. Mark began leaning into her insights, drawing her deeper into discussions, yet each forward step added weight to Emma's heart. The elite's grim look signaled disapproval, cautioning her against this uncharted alliance. Anxiety shrouded her passion, panic tightening her throat as weeks passed, each decision adding pressure between them, a precarious dance between progress and the looming threat of corporate indifference. With their mission teetering, a tide of challenges surged through the company, forcing Emma to confront not only her father's legacy but her desperate need for recognition. As she stood on the brink of a crucial breakthrough, shadows of doubt began to encroach upon her heart. Would she stand tall, or would the oppressive nature of the corporate machine swallow her dream whole? Tension escalated, merging with the pulse of her heart as she realized she was perched precariously on the edge of a defining choice. The weight of one small decision loomed large, threatening to unravel everything she fought for. Emma's mind raced as she left the conference room, the weight of her words still echoing against the stark walls of Titan Tech. Each step felt heavy, anchoring her to the present, yet her thoughts spiraled back to the connection established with Mark. Had she truly opened a door to real change, or had she just thrown herself into the crosshairs of corporate backlash? In the days that followed, she had become a walking contradiction, a symbol of both hope and uncertainty. Mark, sensing the stir in the corporate hierarchy, started to invite her more actively into strategic meetings. Emma felt like an imposter, surrounded by seasoned executives whose years in the industry overshadowed her brief internship. Yet as she prepared for each session, she studied hard, absorbing every scrap of knowledge, analyzing strategies, and even contemplating the structure of their discussions. Gradually, she began to identify patterns, how certain ideas gained traction, how others were subtly dismissed, and most importantly, how compassion could enhance innovation. With each presentation, she fought against the crippling self-doubt that threatened to unravel her newfound confidence. The boardroom, once an intimidating jungle, became a canvas where she began to paint her vision, data bullet points transformed into heartfelt stories of workers whose lives depended on the decisions made within those glass walls. The narrative of safety, accountability, and humanity became the core of her contributions, a tribute to her father's quiet resilience. However, Mark's leadership style was multifaceted. As he embraced her insights, others began to counteract, urging for a return to traditional profit-centric approaches. They questioned Emma's use of emotive storytelling in a space dominated by spreadsheets and bottom lines. "We're in business to make money, not to stoke sentimentality," murmured one senior executive, a man whose name Emma had yet to learn. The palpable tension that followed that remark stung, leaving Emma grappling with a fundamental dilemma. Was she fighting for her father's legacy or risking her position in this sinking ship for ideals? While she faced the pushback from her peers, Mark fluctuated in his responses, occasionally supportive but often caught in a web of expectations from the board. Emma noticed his frustrations were reflective of her own. Every ambitious leap she took seemed to be met with narrow-minded pragmatism from the veteran players in the game. There was no turning back from the ethics managed alongside profits, and she felt tethered to a greater mission, yet doubt shadowed these convictions. As Mark leaned into Emma's perspective, she noticed changes within him too. He sought her input more actively, defending her points when the board pushed back, slowly forging a path for a shift in Titan's culture. Yet the deeper she dove into this endeavor, the more the stakes began to feel like explosives primed to detonate. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, urging her to push forward, yet whispers of self-preservation and conformity grew louder. Emma resolved to capitalize on the moment, to cement her beliefs within the company framework. She gathered her courage and schemed out a plan, determined to solidify her place at Titan Tech while etching her father's legacy into its foundation. Her focus sharpened, each scenario meticulously plotted, and as she prepared to pitch her ideas in the next board meeting, she felt the heavy prologue of her journey morph into a daunting climax. The moment was upon her, a chance to transform not only Titan Tech but herself. Would she rise to the challenge and arm herself with courage, or would the suffocating weight of corporate norms smother her before she could even take flight? As she rehearsed her presentation in front of a mirror, her reflection stared back with a mix of determination and fear. Just then, a notification pinged on her phone, a reminder for the next meeting, a chance to confront all expectations head-on. Staring at her reflection, she resolved to seize that moment. "No more playing it safe," she whispered, making a silent pact to embrace risk and authenticity. As she stepped out into the bustling corridor, the stakes elevated with every heartbeat. She prepared to lock horns in an imminent confrontation that could either validate her vision or shatter her aspirations. Emma's pulse quickened, each thump marking the chorus of her ambition. What awaited her was a fight not only for her ideals but for the very voice she'd found in the previous storm. And in that moment, she knew, the time had come to face both the board and the bruising truth that they may not be ready to hear. Would she break barriers, or was the facade of success merely a mask over an indifference she had yet to unveil? The boardroom loomed before Emma, its glass walls reflecting not just the sterile environment of Titan Tech but also the swirl of emotions inside her. She clenched her hands into fists at her sides, a conscious attempt to tether herself to the present despite anxiety, fear, and determination raging beneath her skin. Today marked the moment when her words would either echo or crumble, the weight of her mission pressed heavily like a thick fog on the cusp of dawn. As she entered, heads turned, and the familiar scent of polished wood and fresh coffee washed over her. Mark was already seated, a slight nod of encouragement from him amplified her resolve. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the shared purpose they had cultivated, a mission not just about profits, but also about transforming workplace culture for the betterment of the people who powered their technology. Engaging with her prepared presentation felt like stepping onto a tightrope strung over uncertainty. Each slide she scrolled through carried the essence of her father's legacy, stories of those entwined with the company's ethos. This was not just a corporate pitch, it was a plea for genuine connection against the cold logic of quarterly returns. But doubts crept in as the executives settled in, their expressions revealing nothing, their whispers carrying the weight of 1,000 no's. In the back of her mind, she recalled the disapproving words, "We're in business to make money, not to stoke sentimentality." Anger flared, igniting her passion into a fiery determination. If this moment was to be her decisive confrontation, then it would be one that melded head and heart, strategy and soul. She began with vivid narratives of the employees behind the numbers. She illustrated how a simple shift toward a more compassionate corporate culture could lead not only to heightened morale but profitability, as employees who felt valued invested more in their work. The board's eyes were glazed, faces impassive, some scribbling notes while others leaned back, arms crossed. It felt like fighting against a brick wall, yet Emma pressed on, fueling herself through the intensity of her own message. As she approached the crux of her presentation, a bold proposal for a revamped wellness initiative, one executive interrupted her, his tone draped in sarcasm. "But tell me, Emma, how is this going to pad our margins next quarter?" The air thickened, and every heartbeat resonated with a growing cacophony of unrest within her. This was the moment to confront, to break the mold. With respect, she began, steadying her voice against the surge of adrenaline, "You have to consider that true innovation comes from a place of empathy. When workers feel safe and valued, they become more productive, leading to better outcomes. This isn't sentimentality, it's strategic foresight." Silence crashed down like a heavy curtain. Mark met her gaze, his expression a cautious blend of admiration and concern. The room was charged, she could feel the energy shift, skepticism grappling with intrigue. Then, something unexpected happened. Mark stood, his presence amplifying Emma's courage. "Let us explore this further," he spoke, throwing Emma a life raft amidst the turbulent waters. His words marked a turning point. Behind him, murmurs of dissent mixed with a palpable curiosity. Other board members began leaning in, expressions softening. Perhaps they hadn't anticipated this approach, this combination of compassion with corporate aims. But the challenge had been issued, and Emma recognized that this was only the beginning. As the discussion deepened, she discerned a shifting dynamic, an awakening curiosity mingled with skepticism that she could nurture. Each question was an opportunity, a doorway, and with every answer, she chipped away at the walls that had once seemed impenetrable. Despite the budding dialogue, a lingering fear tugged at the edges of her consciousness. Angry glances from other executives revealed the stakes were high. This wasn't merely a proposal, it was a potential harbinger of discontent among established interests. And as she engaged with her colleagues, Emma felt the thrill of combat. The real battles were yet to come, fending off opposition, defending her vision, and confronting her own limitations. The room, once stagnant, began to pulse with an unfamiliar energy, like a crack in the dam, hinting at a shift of tides. She hadn't just presented an idea, she had ignited a conversation that could fundamentally challenge the status quo. As she tackled all questions with newfound fervor, a chiming alarm echoed in her mind. What if the very changes she fought for not only transformed Titan Tech but also exposed deep vulnerabilities within herself? And as that realization struck, a new sense of urgency enveloped her journey. Would she maintain this momentum, or risk fracturing under the pressure of higher stakes? Emma understood that the battle wasn't won yet. With each passing moment, the weight of potential outcomes loomed larger. The question awaited her: could she master this corporate landscape while remaining true to herself, or would she lose sight of the values that had fueled her fight? As the boardroom buzzed with renewed energy, Emma felt her resolve crystallize. She was no longer just fighting for an idea but sparking a transformation. Yet, with every ounce of power she summoned, waves of trepidation gnawed at her core. She had stepped into the lion's den, and though Mark had backed her, she knew that champions could turn into adversaries at a moment's notice. The executives who had once leaned back in casual dismissal were now leaning in, but a few still held reservations that could fracture her initiative. Each question posed by the board felt like a tactical engagement, a chess game played in real time where every move had the potential to tip the scales one way or the other. Emma geared up to confront not just their doubts but her own vulnerabilities. What if her passion for change was misconstrued as a naive dream? Each uncertainty crept forward, stalking her confidence like a shadow. "Tell me something, Emma," jumped in Lorraine, a senior executive known for her sharp tongue. "What makes you think the people who work here want this?" Her words struck like a cold breeze, keen and unyielding. For a split second, Emma felt the weight of disbelief press down her chest. A part of her considered retreating, to anchor herself in the familiar waters of data and profit, where she could remain unassailable. But then she recalled the faces of the employees, those who had confided in her about their silent struggles and longing for change. They were not mere numbers on a spreadsheet. "I speak to them," she began, her voice firm yet compassionate. "I hear their stories, their struggles for understanding, safety, growth. This is not just a proposal, this is a movement for the very essence of what Titan Tech can become." Each word sharpened her sense of purpose. This was about creating a culture of trust and support, a haven where innovation could flourish precisely because employees felt valued. She could see Lorraine's expression softening, curiosity flickering in her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. With each exchange, Emma felt herself stretching, becoming more than the employee she had entered as. She was evolving into a leader. However, vulnerability lurked, whispering fears of inadequacy as her message clawed its way through a labyrinth of skepticism. What if she laid bare her authentic self only to meet a wall of rejection? Deciding to take a leap, she shared a personal anecdote: her father's final days running a small software company before he succumbed to illness. Those moments of vulnerability forged a bond that translated into her professional vision. "I saw how passion and a sense of belonging not only encouraged those around him but forged lasting relationships that propelled his business through tough times," she revealed, her voice steady despite the maelstrom inside. "This is about making connections, making people want to come into work because they believe in something bigger than themselves." The shift in the atmosphere was electrifying. Emma felt voices rise and hands loosen, barriers in the boardroom beginning to break. Mark nodded encouragingly, and as if spurred by that silent affirmation, energies began to intertwine, discussions around her sweeping like gusts of wind. They began to toss ideas back and forth. What could this initiative really look like? How could Titan Tech redefine themselves in the industry while embracing emotional intelligence? But as dialogue unfolded, Emma's mind raced with unresolved questions. What if the initiative invited resistance from entrenched members? How could she ensure that her momentum didn't just spark initial excitement but resulted in tangible change? Her internal conflict intensified. A singular thought cut through the chaos: would she cling to the familiar, her previous role, her past achievements, or seize this moment, her chance to redefine herself? The fear of overstepping her bounds clashed violently with her newly emboldened vision. Her mind raced, caught between cautious strategy and the raw energy of the moment. She resolved to press forward, embracing the uncertainty while anchoring herself to the very ideals she advocated for. As the dialogue swirled, ringing around her like a thrilling tempest, she sensed a new presence, the potentiality of resistance, looming like a storm yet to break. Who would stand behind the status quo, resistant to her vision? Emma shook off her uncertainty, determined to fortify her position. She realized this was merely the opening act. The stakes were ascending, and the real challenge was just around the corner. How could she maintain her trajectory amidst impending opposition? Would her vision withstand the weight of scrutiny? Could her bold vision survive its first tests? The meeting room felt like a forge, and Emma was the iron being shaped by the heat of scrutiny. Questions lingered in the air, weighing heavier than before. She could sense Lorraine's skepticism growing like a dark cloud, looming and ready to rain on her parade. This was not simply about articulating ideas, it was about defending a dream, one that required her to confront not just the board's doubts but also her own. As she contemplated the boardroom's dynamics, her heart raced. What would happen if her efforts fell flat? Would Mark step forward as a shield for her, or would he distance himself to preserve his reputation? Each executive in the room now had a stake in her proposal, and in the cacophony of voices, the emergent question echoed: what happened when goodwill met the interests of survival? Let us assume this is a great idea. How do we measure success? Lorraine's voice cut through, challenging Emma again, sharp as a knife. It was a valid point, one that brought Emma face to face with a raw fear lurking beneath her ambitious exterior. I believe success is gauged by the engagement and satisfaction of our employees, Emma replied, her voice steady but winded with the weight of the challenge. She quickly recalled the numerous conversations she had held with staff, insights she needed to bring into the light, substantiating her vision with facts. We can implement surveys and feedback sessions, regular check-ins where employees can voice their thoughts and experiences. I suggest a year-long pilot program to assess the cultural impact. But as she formulated her rebuttal, trepidation nagged at her conscience. What if numbers wouldn't sufficiently quell the doubts of staunch traditionalists? Lorraine's eyes glinted as she perceived Emma's hesitancy. And what if this initiative falls flat? What then? We can't afford to sink resources into a feel-good experiment. The room tensed, air thickening around Emma as if in preparation for thunder. Would her vision be reduced to just that, an experiment subject to the cold calculus of margins and profits? Emma felt her internal fortitude waver. The question stirred something deep within her, a soft but firm insistence that ran counter to the economic facades of the corporate world. Corporate success often brushed aside empathy, but she believed that the two could coexist. She took a calculated breath to calm the tempest within, realizing she had a choice before her. I believe, she began, her heart racing, that change in culture precedes financial outcomes. Engaged employees become committed allies, their willingness to innovate leads to a competitive advantage. If we empower people to contribute meaningfully, they are more likely to exceed expectations and drive performance. As the statement settled over the meeting, a ripple of unease coursed through the room, stirring an unexpected countercurrent. Mark interjected, supporting her argument, I've observed how investment in culture pays dividends in productivity. Emma's right, we must see beyond quarterly gains. The tension fluctuated, two powerful forces now grappled, Emma's competition and Mark's seasoned assurance. Still, Lorraine watched intently, clearly unconvinced. Emma steeled herself, understanding this was more than an argument, it was a test of her newly discovered leadership. She locked eyes with Lorraine, commanding the space with sincerity. What I'm proposing is not merely about tools or metrics. It's revolutionary because it's about inviting voices that have long gone unheard. I want to create a space where vulnerability is accepted and innovation arises in response to our shared struggles. The boardroom seemed suspended in a moment of disbelief, threads of doubt tangling with unexpected admiration. Emma realized this was no longer just about protecting her idea. It was about reaffirming her identity in leadership. Would she stand tall in the face of challenge or retreat into her old, safe role? With urgency clenching her chest, she committed to this new journey. Emma knew she could no longer return to the shadows of avoidance. She would lean into engagement. The time for passivity was over. Yet, strong winds of resistance still awaited her. Let us schedule a follow-up discussion to tackle implementation specifics, Lorraine concluded, her tone still carrying weight but slowly shifting to open inquiry. Relief washed over Emma, but beneath it lay a burgeoning anxiety. The coming days promised exploration, but also potential defeat. She felt ready, but was she truly equipped for the push ahead? The realization hit hard: she was not merely stepping into uncharted territory, she was redefining it. However, looming questions about support and manifestation encircled her. Soon the first real tests would emerge, as divergent factions mobilized for and against her vision. Would she emerge unscathed from the trials ahead? As Emma glanced around the boardroom, shadows of uncertainty remained, and a stirring thought solidified: the real battle had only just begun. The days following the meeting surged like a tide, ebbs and flows of anticipation reshaping Emma's reality. Each interaction with her colleagues felt charged, whispers of her proposal swept through the office with varying degrees of enthusiasm and skepticism. Emma could feel the weight of eyes assessing her. She had taken a bold step, and while her heart thudded with determination, doubt flickered like a candle in the wind. At her desk, she scrolled through feedback forms collected from employees, eager yet apprehensive. Their words peppered her with both encouragement and critique, a blend of desires and fears. She had set out on a mission to cultivate a culture of openness, yet here were the raw truths: fears of job security, fatigue from past initiatives that felt hollow. The voices she had sought to elevate were still entangled in a history of disillusionment. During lunch, she overheard a group discussing the impending follow-up meeting with Lorraine. Does she really think she can pull this off? One voice questioned, skepticism laced with uncertainty. Every time they try something like this, it fizzles out. Emma's gut twisted, her mind racing. Did they not understand the magnitude of what was at stake? It wasn't just her vision, it was about crafting an environment where people's contributions were valued and recognized. Later that day, Emma found herself standing before the window overlooking the city skyline. The air was heavy with the smell of rain, a storm brewing both in the sky and within her. She realized she desperately needed clarity, a foundational plan that would not just wrap her objectives in hope but in actionable steps. That evening, she took a deliberate approach. With an expansive sheet of paper before her, she began to outline potential strategies: workshops for employees to voice their ideas, mentorship programs linking tenured employees with new hires, avenues to celebrate small wins in cultural shifts. The outline filled her with hope, transforming nebulous fear into a structured format, each step designed to underline her commitment to change. As Emma pushed deeper into her plans, she felt her resolve strengthening. She recognized that this wasn't merely about her professional aspirations but an evolution in her character. She couldn't afford to shrink back. What was once a timid voice within was slowly transforming, emboldening her to stand firm, a conductor directing a symphony. But the fear of failure clung obstinately. What if she was misreading the pulse of the company? What if the skepticism around her proposal was a reflection of her inadequacies? She banished the intrusive thoughts, shaking her head. Finding strength was a continuous journey, a pitfall to embrace and learn from rather than flee. On the day of the follow-up meeting, nerves ignited an inner dialogue that brushed against anxiety. She walked in with a stack of materials, prepared not just as an advocate for her initiative but as a change leader, a role she had never formally held. As she stood before Lorraine and the other board members, the gravity of the moment loomed large. She would present her vision with confidence, but she would also acknowledge the doubts that lingered. Today, I want to share a clearer roadmap that addresses both our aspirations and our hesitations, she began. Her voice resonated with a new timbre, rich with intention. As she laid out the framework, she felt something shift, not just in the room, but within herself. Each bullet point was more than a task, it was a promise to foster connection, trust, and accountability. Emma witnessed Lorraine's expression evolve, intrigued yet calculating. There was a palpable tension as the room absorbed her earnestness. This time, she would engage their skepticism openly, enabling her vision to breathe through dialogue. With each point of discussion, the barriers between her and the board started to thin. Yet, as she insisted on collaboration, she noticed Lorraine's posture harden, eyes narrowing slightly, probing but defiant. Would this be a moment of breakthrough? Or confrontation? Emma couldn't be certain, but for the first time, she felt hopeful, ready for either outcome. As the meeting progressed, Lorraine interrupted, "Let us say we proceed. How do you deal with employees resistant to change?" Emma's heart raced, but instead of freezing, she gripped the edge of the table, steadying herself. By involving them in the conversation from the start, Lorraine. Every person contributes to the culture, we can't impose change without their insight or buy-in. The question hung in the air, pregnant with possibilities and challenges yet to unfold. Would her words be enough to unravel the threads of doubt, or would they tighten the knots around her vision tighter than before? The moment pulsed with tension, as if the climactic point had arrived. Emma had come so far, but was she ready for what lay ahead? Emma's breath caught in her throat as Lorraine's question resonated through the quiet room, dominating the air between them. The board's skepticism loomed like a storm cloud, ready to unleash its fury. A part of her wanted to retreat to self-doubt, to shrink back and let the weight of uncertainty crush her burgeoning confidence. Instead, a flicker of defiance ignited within her. Taking a steadying breath, she recalled her outline, the carefully crafted strategies that had offered her hope. "We must create spaces where employees feel their voices matter, Lorraine. Implementing feedback loops will be essential. Employees need to see that their input leads to meaningful change," she said, embodying a conviction that surprised even herself. As she elaborated on her vision for workshops, role-playing, and open forums, she noticed Lorraine's brows knitting tighter together. Each gesture felt like an act of war or perhaps a test. This formidable opponent was clearly not used to sharing power. Emma felt a rush of adrenaline as she boldly continued. "People need practical steps to overcome their fears," she asserted, drawing upon the feedback forms again. She cited specific examples, infusing her plans with authenticity. "Many have expressed their past disappointments. Acknowledging that history and building from it are imperative." The board members shifted uneasily, a mixture of discomfort and curiosity apparent in their expressions. Lorraine could be an anchor or an adversary, Emma thought grimly. The meeting's atmosphere crackled with intensity, the battleground of ideas. "And what if those employees still resist, Emma?" Lorraine interjected again, her voice draped in veiled challenge. Emma stepped further into the breach. "Resisting change often stems from fear. By fostering trust, we can alleviate that. I propose mentorship programs to guide those intimidated by new systems. Pairing seasoned employees with the newer ones can create bonds and a sense of belonging." A glimmer of curiosity broke through Lorraine's resolute facade, though it was quickly masked by skepticism. Emma caught it a small victory in a landscape filled with doubt. Her heart raced. Could this moment of confrontation morph into a breakthrough? As she navigated through the details of her plan, Emma felt an unfamiliar surge of agency. This was her narrative taking shape. She was not merely an employee presenting an initiative, she was a leader carving a new path. The questions became more pointed, but she was no longer afraid. Each challenge thrown her way felt like a vital part of her development. She recognized that every rebuttal was an opportunity to define her stance, to clarify her vision. As they discussed potential obstacles, Emma fortified her resolve, equipping herself with data, feedback, and solutions. Standing tall, she found herself contemplating the very structure of the boardroom dynamic. Lorraine was not merely an opponent, she was an enigma wrapped in authority. If Emma could come to understand her motivations and fears, perhaps she could forge a path toward collaboration rather than confrontation. Gathering her composure, Emma took a final breath, securing her presence in the room. "This isn't just my fight, it belongs to all of us. Perhaps it's time for all voices to be heard, including yours, Lorraine." I welcome any insights you might share to enrich our approach. The tension shifted palpably, turning the room into a crucible of negotiation and potential. Lorraine, caught off guard, frowned and leaned back, a sign, perhaps, that Emma's words had found their mark. She had engaged the formidable CEO, inviting her into a dialogue rather than casting her as the antagonist. Emma knew the road ahead still loomed vast, filled with jagged uncertainties and the terrifying prospect of failure. Would Lorraine reciprocate the openness? Would she embrace the collaborative spirit? The air bristled with unspoken questions, thick with anticipation. A decisive moment approached for both Emma and Lorraine, one poised to redefine not just the team's future but her own professional identity. As Lorraine opened her mouth to respond, Emma's mind raced toward the next big challenge. If she somehow won this round, would she be ready for the deeper battles that lay ahead within corporate politics? The ramifications of success felt daunting, yet enticing. What would she reveal about herself then? Would she maintain her newfound authority, or lose herself in the game of power? The moment hung in the air, charged with possibilities both foreboding and exhilarating. Emma steeled herself for the response, for it would shape the contours of her journey ahead. Lorraine paused, scanning the room before returning her keen gaze to Emma. The silence that followed felt surreal, stretching infinitely, as if the air had thickened in response to Emma's boldness. Faces around the table flickered between curiosity and concern, each member processing the unexpected dynamics unfolding before them. This wasn't just a meeting, it was an awakening. In that tense moment, Emma fought the urge to fidget. It was crucial to hold her ground. The facade of confidence she had painstakingly constructed could easily shatter if she allowed self-doubt to resurface. Instead, she focused on the pulse of the room. Every heartbeat echoed her anticipation. She had already dared to suggest a new paradigm. Now, Lorraine's reaction would dictate whether they would step into dialogue or retreat into defensive posturing. Lorraine's lips curled into a momentary smirk, a tension-fueled mix of intrigue and condescension. "Interesting perspective, Emma," she said slowly, as if choosing her words for maximum impact. "But how do you propose to tackle the deeply ingrained attitudes we have established here? It's all well and good to discuss change, but let us be real, morale won't shift overnight." Emma sensed the challenge layered within Lorraine's words. This was more than an inquiry, it was a test. She felt the weight of her responsibility settle on her shoulders, and with it, a renewed determination. "You're right," she replied, allowing the confidence she felt to flow into her voice. "But immediate change isn't my goal. It's about cultivating a mindset where gradual transformation can thrive. We begin by creating a culture of openness and trust, which will ultimately inspire teams to embrace new methodologies." Surprisingly, the board seemed less hostile. Several members exchanged glances, sensing her conviction. Emma's heart raced, exhilarated yet cautious. This was not just about winning the argument, it was about establishing herself as a credible leader in this institution. Lorraine leaned forward, arms crossed. "And what if your methods fail? Where does that leave you, and more importantly, us?" Emma felt the sting of Lorraine's skepticism. Her instincts told her to retreat slightly, to avoid conflict, but she recognized that this was a critical moment in her professional trajectory. Biting back her nerves, she replied, "Every strategy carries inherent risks. But I firmly believe that without calculated risks, we won't advance. If my proposals falter, we'll learn and adapt together. It's that very learning that positions us to innovate moving forward." As she spoke, Emma realized she was no longer the timid employee in this scenario, she was a catalyst for change. The realization was shocking and invigorating. She was crafting a narrative of resilience for herself right in the crucible of discord, a narrative that demanded growth even in the face of fear. "Let us approach this progressively," she suggested, inviting Lorraine to rethink her stance without outright confrontation. "We implement a pilot program to gauge employee feedback and adjustments. If the feedback is pessimistic, we modify. If positive, we expand. This could serve as the cornerstone for bigger changes if we choose to foster an environment of collaboration. The implications of her suggestions slipped through Emma's mind like streams of a hopeful future. Was she initiating a shift? Would her voice echo beyond this boardroom, shifting dynamics across the company? The board members seemed more engaged than ever, leaning in and directing attentive glances towards Lorraine, who was now weighing options rather than merely criticizing. Emma could hardly suppress the thrill coursing through her veins. She had touched something essential. Was it vision? Hope? Just as she prepared to summarize her key points, Lorraine let out a sharp sigh. You may have something there, she conceded, though skepticism still clung tightly to her words. But I need more than a mere vision. Bring me tangible data and a clear plan. Emma nodded, a rush of determination surging within her. Absolutely. I'll compile everything and present a structured proposal next week. As Lorraine's demeanor shifted slightly, Emma couldn't help but wonder whether today had forged a more significant connection, one that could fracture the hard shell of corporate hierarchy or, at the very least, open a conversation she never thought possible. The meeting concluded, but Emma remained caught in her thoughts. She was not merely seeking acceptance, she was redefining herself in this space. The boardroom was not just a workplace anymore, it was a stage on which Emma could illustrate her potential. As she left the room, a troubling question nagged at her: how much of this newfound courage stemmed from her professional aspirations versus a deeper, personal longing for validation? The lines between personal and professional were blurring, drawing her dangerously closer to confronting her own identity. What awaited Emma as she ventured deeper into this world? Would she emerge unscathed, or was she destined to confront not just Lorraine but the very essence of her ambitions? Only time would tell. Emma stepped out of the boardroom, the echoes of her words still resonating against the stark walls. She felt buoyant, as if she had broken through a barrier that had suffocated her for far too long. The adrenaline was still racing through her veins, the thrill of confrontation awakening something dormant within her. However, a gnawing unease started wrapping around her thoughts. The moment of bravery that had sparked a flicker of respect from the board members came with an equally pressing shadow of doubt. What if Lorraine was right? What if her ideas, no matter how fresh or well-intentioned, crumbled under scrutiny? The waves of her previous insecurities crashed against her newly fortified resolve. Emma could feel herself at a crossroads, torn between the exhilaration of challenge and the fear of failure. Determined to keep the momentum going, she leaned against the cool surface of a conference table, taking a deep breath as she mentally mapped out her next steps. She knew she had to craft a plan that was not just theoretical but tangible enough to persuade even the most skeptical board members. Data, case studies, and employee testimonies would be her tools. Yet, as she listed the details in her mind, she felt the weight of her ambition begin to press down. Was she ready for this? To plunge into an unknown territory, to unearth allies among her colleagues? In her previous roles, she had always aimed for harmony, shying away from pushing boundaries. Yet here she was, having thrust herself into the spotlight, now exposed. The thrill of her newly discovered capabilities fanned the flames of confidence, but she had to confront the fundamental, unsettling question: who would she be if she succeeded? That evening, Emma sat at her kitchen table, coffee by her side and a blank document on her laptop screen. The blinking cursor seemed to mock her stillness. She tapped her fingers against the hardwood surface, willing her thoughts into clarity. What data would best illustrate her argument for change? How could she not only convince Lorraine but also inspire her colleagues to embrace the new strategies? As she pondered, her mind began to wander to the stories of others who faced similar crossroads. Her sister, who had taken a leap into entrepreneurship, faced rejection after rejection but persisted, ultimately flourishing. Emma could almost hear her sister's voice urging her to channel that same tenacity. Could she, too, evolve from timid employee to a fearsome advocate for innovation? Days turned into a blur as Emma immersed herself in research, she sought out mentors, examined industry blueprints, and even reached out to colleagues for insights. The more she learned, the more empowered she felt. She could see herself not just advocating, but fundamentally transforming company culture. Each conversation, each new piece of information fanned the embers of her ambition into roaring flames. But even as she crafted her proposal, Lorraine's words haunted her: "What if your methods fail?" Emma understood now it wasn't just about the data. She needed to summon the courage to pivot gracefully if things didn't go according to plan. And therein lay the challenge: how to embrace risks while avoiding the temptation to retreat if things became daunting. The day of the follow-up meeting arrived, the atmosphere crackling with anticipation. Emma could feel the weight of gazes upon her as she walked into the conference room, her carefully organized proposal clutched close to her chest. Surrounded by individuals she once regarded as untouchable, she took her place at the head of the table. Just as she prepared to present, a question grew heavy in her chest: would this moment bless her with success or sink her ambitions once more into the abyss of uncertainty? With one look at Lorraine, whose expression remained inscrutable, Emma steeled herself, ready to confront the deep complexities of her aspirations. She opened her mouth to speak, and it struck her how her personal journey was now at the center of this narrative. It was not merely a proposal. It was her redemption. The stakes were higher than they had ever been, setting the stage for an imminent confrontation that would either solidify her place in this world or leave her questioning everything. As she launched into the presentation, the silver lining of her ambitions hung tantalizingly in the balance. What awaited her on the other side of this moment? Would she be celebrated, or would she find herself plunging deeper into the labyrinth of self-discovery? The room hummed with tension as Emma stood at the center of the conference table, the eyes of the board members fixed on her. Today was not just about a proposal, it was about transforming her own identity, carving out her place in a world filled with uncertainty and opportunity. She could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down upon her, both exhilarating and terrifying. Drawing a deep breath, she began her presentation, vividly laying out data-driven insights paired with personal anecdotes. She spoke passionately about her vision for a culture that integrated well-being and productivity, drawing parallels between the human experience and corporate success. As she navigated through the slides, the initial spark she had ignited with Mark and the board began to flicker into life. She realized she was no longer a passive intern, she had become a catalyst for change, wielding her voice not merely as a plea for recognition but as a declaration of her worth. At one point, Lorraine interjected, her tone reflecting both skepticism and curiosity. "Emma, how do you plan to ensure that these changes are implemented effectively, and what metrics will you use to track success?" Instead of crumbling under the challenge, Emma's heart surged. "Implementation will be bolstered by collaboration and continuous feedback," she articulated confidently. "We'll start with pilot programs and collect qualitative and quantitative data, allowing us to forge a responsive and adaptive approach tailored to our employees' needs." The board members, initially leaning back, began to lean forward, intrigued. Emma could sense the shift. A collective reevaluation had begun. Each moment spent engaged in dialogue transformed her from a mere participant to a leader, capable of directing the conversation toward mutual solutions rather than simply defending her proposal. Days passed, and after what felt like an eternity of feedback and meetings, Emma received the approval for her initiative. The board's endorsement resonated like a powerful affirmation, validating her voice and cementing her evolution into an advocate for change at Titan Tech. She was no longer just Emma, the intern, she was now Emma, the changemaker. As the weeks unfolded, she founded the wellness program, which took root quickly. Employees began to share their stories of once muted struggles and aspirations, igniting discussions that fostered camaraderie and trust. Emma's vision materialized into a vibrant movement within the company, one that married profit with humanity. The transformative impact of her initiative caught the attention of industry leaders. Awards followed, recognizing Titan Tech not only for its innovation but also for its commitment to employee engagement and well-being. Emma, standing on stage to accept an award for her outstanding contributions, felt a surge of pride wash over her, a validation of her father's dreams, reminding her that his sacrifices were honored in her success. With each acknowledgement and success, Emma felt her confidence solidify. Conversations shifted within the board, where her opinions were now requested rather than tolerated. Colleagues who once dismissed her were now seeking her guidance, and she embraced this newfound role with grace, remembering the stilted silence of her first meeting now eclipsed by the vibrant discussions happening daily at Titan Tech. As she stood at her desk on one ordinary day, Emma reflected on her journey, how vulnerability had transformed into strength, how each challenge she faced had led her to this point of accomplishment. Her achievements were tangible, and she was forever changed. Her sense of validation transcended mere recognition. She had rewritten her narrative and solidified her place in a world where her voice mattered. Emma marveled at her personal growth, her achievement no longer merely professional but an unmistakable embodiment of her identity. Her father's whispers of encouragement echoed within her, reminding her that dreams could indeed rise from the ashes of doubt. Emma faced the mirror, and for the first time, she saw not just a reflection, but a woman of immense potential, worthy of taking up space within the corporate realm, her roots anchoring her even as her branches reached toward greater horizons. She held her phone, hovering over the large screen on her desk, a new notification drawing her attention. A colleague had just shared her success story across social media, sparking conversations and newfound support from outsiders. It was bittersweet, the platform once daunting now exhilaratingly expansive, waiting for her touch. This was only the beginning, Emma realized, her ambition flickering like a steadfast flame within her. She would continue to step forward, embracing each stride with the knowledge that she was not alone. The journey ahead promised challenges aplenty, but she would tackle them head-on with the unwavering confidence she had cultivated. The urgency surged within her. It was time to reach out to inspire others with their own transformational journeys. And she knew exactly how to do it, to share her story. Emma began jotting down thoughts for her first blog post, feeling a rush of intent. "Every story begins with courage," she wrote. "Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.